Good afternoon and welcome to the July 24th edition of Office Hours presented by the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. My name is Dr. Tisa Silver Kennedy. I'm the founder and executive director of the center, and I'm your host for today. So before we get into the questions that have been submitted by our community, I just want to share a bit with you about the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness, our vision, and some of our programs and activities. So the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness was founded in 2021 with an ambitious vision for college and career school students, specifically in the state of Maryland. We have identified 6 pillars of collegiate financial wellness that we want all students to be able to achieve. Those are being creditworthy, ready, resilient, empowered, successful, and thriving. And don't worry, I'm not going to read all the small print, but if you're interested in learning more about the center and this vision and how we execute it, you can visit us online at mccfw.org. Again, that's mccfw.org. All right. The next thing I have to do is issue a quick disclaimer here, and that's that the information that's presented during office hours is being presented for informational purposes only. It does not constitute personal, legal, or financial advice. We do our best to give you the most up-to-date information, but whatever is going on, you also need to make sure that you are taking that into account along with your personal financial situation. That would be your loans, your household characteristics and income, your career type. There's so many factors that should be considered before you make any major strategic decisions. And we are just one source of trusted information around student loans and repayment. So now that that's out of the way, let's get into some updates for this week. So a lot's been happening. Many of you know that SAVE, which is short for Saving on a Valuable Education, has been in the course as of late. We had a piece of SAVE that was blocked by one court ruling, and then an appeal was filed by the Biden-Harris administration, which was temporarily successful and allowed one portion of SAVE to succeed. But then we got a larger injunction that came down and has basically blocked all of SAVE for the time being. So I know that many of you have received information from your servicers that you're trying to make sense of. And I just wanted to share with you that we're kind of in that same place because we know just as much as you know right about now. What's happening with SAVE is that SAVE has been placed on pause entirely. So the payment reduction that was supposed to go into effect on July 1st for people who had undergraduate loans only is not happening. The forgiveness on a shorter timeline for people who borrowed less than $12,000, as an example, they could have their remaining balance forgiven after 10 years through SAVE. That is not happening right now. So just keep in mind that as things work their way through the courts, sometimes we're going to see this kind of back and forth stuff. And I know that it is so not conducive to wellness or even personal peace, but this is where we are right now. And until there is something more permanent, our advice for you is just to be patient. Also, pay attention to the communications that you're receiving from your servicer. If you're seeing numbers for a payment that look outlandish, then you should reach out to that servicer to see if there has been a mistake. But we want you to advocate for yourself, but also do your best to keep your accounts within good standing. One other thing that we have heard about this, how SAVE has affected people who are enrolled in it. The court rulings regarding SAVE have affected people who are enrolled in the program. That is that their loans have been placed into a temporary forbearance, and during that forbearance, interest is not going to be accruing, which is a positive thing. On the negative side, we have heard that so far, the time spent during this non-interest bearing forbearance will not count toward public service loan forgiveness or IDR. We are hoping to hear a change in that. But as I mentioned before, we're working with the same information that you are. And right now, that just means paying attention to what's coming out from the courts, or if anything comes out from the Biden-Harris administration. So again, the message is, please be patient. There's nothing that you need to do right this moment. We just need to wait for a final decision to come down so that we'll know the future of SAVE, and so we can then give you more advice on how to get back on track for repayment or for forgiveness by way of income-driven repayment or public service loan forgiveness. Outside of SAVE, we have had a pretty exciting week here at the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. Yesterday, July 23rd, was our 4th annual virtual symposium that's entitled Advancing Collegiate Financial Wellness as an Essential Ingredient for Student Success. So yesterday we gathered with I think nearly 150 of our colleagues to discuss things like the FAFSA, student loan repayment. Of course, SAVE was on the agenda. It was just a really good space for learning, for sharing, for growing, and just making sure that we are advancing the cause of collegiate financial wellness. So I want to thank everyone who joined us for the symposium. I do want to thank our special guests. We were joined by the state's comptroller, Brooke Learman. If you're interested in learning more about the comptroller or keeping up with her, you can visit the hashtag Take a Look with Brooke as she's traveling throughout the state and doing the work of the comptroller's office. We also were joined by Representative John Sarbanes, who is the author of the law that created public service loan forgiveness. So we had the opportunity to hear from him about the inspiration for public service loan forgiveness, as well as share with him some of the victories that we've been able to help people achieve, and also to thank him for following through with that inspiration to write what ended up becoming public service loan forgiveness, and also to continue advocating for improvements to PSLF to make that benefit more accessible to our colleagues who are working in public service careers. We also heard from Secretary Sanjay Rai. He's the Secretary of the Maryland Higher Education Commission, and he shared so much about his educational journey from India over here to the United States, and also his commitment to increasing access and student success, as well as closing the achievement gap in higher education. So we're just really thankful that all of them joined us, and we're thankful that they shared so much of their own personal experiences, as well as the work that they're doing on behalf of my Maryland's college and career school students. One more shout out, and that's to the president of the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, Dr. Heidi Anderson, who sent us remarks from Princess Anne, and we hope that New Hawk Day went well for the University of Maryland Eastern Shore yesterday, and we're just thankful that she took the time to send a message of support to the center, as well as our symposium attendees, while she had so much going on. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We will let you all know as soon as footage from the symposium has been uploaded to YouTube so that you can watch it all. All right, now we can get into the questions that have come in from our community. And the first one is there a place to upload a signed manual employer certification form on the new studentaid.gov website, or is it fax only? And if so, what is the fax number? So yes, studentaid.gov has a lot of newness. So we'll talk about the options for submitting PSLF applications. You would need to log into studentaid.gov to gain access to the portion of the PSLF help tool where you can actually enter your employer's information. So if you go to studentaid.gov/PSLF, once you log in, you're going to arrive at the PSLF help tool. From there, you'll enter your employer using their employer ID number, and you'll answer a couple of questions about your employment. And once you've finished adding the details about your employment, you'll be asked whether you want to submit the application manually or by electronic signature. So you want to select the manual signature option. Once you've done that, you'll be given the opportunity to upload a PDF of the document. So from there, you want to go to the My Activity section. And under Current Activity, you should see a box that's labeled PSLF form. And the PSLF form comes through as a PDF document. You can click that box and use the option to update your scanned form into the system. Now, this is new because for those of you who've applied for PSLF before, I know you're used to going through Mohela.com, and they had their own set of steps for uploading documents. This is different because you're not dealing directly with Mohela.com, you're dealing with studentaid.gov. So the steps are a bit different, but it still requires you to log in to access that PDF and then upload it through the web portal. If this doesn't work for you, you can submit the form by fax, and the number is listed on the screen. It's 540-212 2415. So you've got options when it comes to submitting that PSLF application. I do want to say, though, that here at the center, we are strong proponents of the electronic signature option because it is faster. It removes so many of those physical and tedious touch points from the process. So if you are able to use the electronic signature, we encourage you to use that before going the manual route and uploading or submitting by fax. All right, let's move on to our next question. That question is also about Mohela. I received an email from Mohela.studentaid.gov instructing me to create a new online account. However, given the issues associated with this transition and Mohela, should I create the new account? So definitely understand this is a valid question. And I know that there have been some issues around servicing, but you have to create a new account. If you want online access to your account, this isn't an option. You have to log on to that new platform. You'll need to make that switch official by going to Mohela.studentaid.gov. You will have to choose a new username and set up a new password. Something else that's different is that once you get into this Mohela.studentaid.gov portal, you will not see your PSLF qualifying payment count the way that you used to. That information can be found by way of studentaid.gov. When you log into Mohela.studentaid.gov, you will see options on the navigation bar for loan forgiveness and discharge. But when you go there, it's not going to take you directly to your loan information. At least it hasn't as of this week. So our recommendation, of course, is that you create your new account as soon as possible so that you can get familiar with it and make sure that you are making your payments to keep your account in good standing. So you'd want to go to Mohela.studentaid.gov to get started with that. All right, let's move on to our next question. This is also about public service loan forgiveness. The question is, I had a mix of direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans. I reached 120 payments before the pause and submitted my PSLF form. It shows that I only owe the direct unsubsidized part of my loans. How is that possible? Do direct unsubsidized loans qualify for PSLF? This is a great question, and this is one that we have seen several times because earlier this year, something new began to happen. We saw people who had subsidized loans, unsubsidized loans, or they had a consolidation loan that had unsubsidized and subsidized portions, and just one portion of the loans were being forgiven, even though the loans had the same qualifying payment count. So this is definitely a good question. The answer is yes. Direct unsubsidized loans do qualify for public service loan forgiveness. Our recommendation here is just to give it a bit of patience and wait a while, because we saw this kind of thing with the split forgiveness happening before the processing pause. And for the people who shared that experience with us, usually the remaining portion of the loans was forgiven about 2 months later. So in time, things worked out. But for now, we're coming off of a processing pause on PSLF applications that lasted like about a little under 2.5 months. So the processing of PSLF applications and discharges has just resumed. The Department of Education is working through the backlog of PSLF applications from prior to the pause and those that were submitted during the months of May, June, and early July. So please exercise some patience here as they get back on board. The other thing I want to note here is that the process with discharges for PSLF, from what we've seen, it happens in waves. So usually there's one day where we hear from several people who got their letter in the mail or the email to say that their loans have been forgiven. It's not something where it's like every day the forgiveness seems to be happening. Now, we're just emerging from a processing pause, so things could have changed, but prior to that pause, we observed the wave. So if you heard something, about your account, but then you didn't hear anything for a while, that's okay. That seems to be typical. So keep that in mind. But if all of your loans have 120 or more qualifying payments, then the remaining loans should be forgiven. Just give it a bit of time, but know that your loans do qualify but sometimes we just see this phenomenon of split forgiveness. So hopefully it works out for you soon. Thanks for the question. All right, let's move on to our next question. And that question is, I am up for renewal in August. When does student aid officially pull your tax information during the IDR and PSLF process? Is opting out of providing my tax information a good idea? So this question is more about income-driven repayment than public service loan forgiveness. Let's take a look at the answer. When it comes to income-driven repayment, it requires you to recertify. That means you have to provide information about your income and your household situation so that your payment can be calculated, and that would be the payment that's in effect for the next 12 months. You can opt to recertify automatically. And in that case, the Department of Education would just pull the relevant information directly from the IRS every year when your recertification date comes around. So quick note before we get into a bit more about recertification. This question also mentioned PSLF. I just want to be clear that the applications for PSLF and income-driven repayment are completely separate. So when you are talking about recertifying, that refers to income-driven repayment. When you are certifying your employment, that's just for PSLF. So these two of these processes both involve certifying something and then certifying again, which we refer to as recertification, but they're totally different sets of information and totally different programs. So with PSLF, there is nothing about your tax information that would be included in the recertification process. With PSLF, recertification is strictly about your employment. When it comes to your employment being recertified, it's just that. It's about your job. Are you still working for a qualifying employer? Are you still full-time, and does that employer qualify? So keep in mind, PSLF has nothing to do with your income, nothing to do with the tax information. The recertification process is separate. When it comes to IDR, there is a recertification process that involves that financial information being transported from the IRS. If you do not consent to automatic recertification, then you will be responsible for connecting with your servicer and providing the information that they need to run your formula and let you know what your payment will be for the next year. When it comes to the automatic certification, it just makes things a lot easier because every year when it's time for you to recertify, they will pull that information directly from the IRS, and you don't have to worry about any hiccups in remaining enrolled in your income-driven repayment plan. So if you're comfortable with it, go ahead and sign up to recertify automatically, and it can definitely make things a lot easier for you. Or if you prefer to stay manual, then you can go ahead and just know that you'll have to be in touch with your servicer each year to make sure that you are staying enrolled in your income-driven repayment plan. So the bottom line is here, opting in to the automatic recertification is a personal choice. For some people, they appreciate the convenience. For others, they might not necessarily want to do that. They'd rather be in control of the process, but it's totally up to you. And you would be able to do that online at studentaid.gov. You would have to log in, and once that IDR application is available, again, there is the opportunity to decide whether you'd like to provide approval for automatic recertification. All right, let's move on to the next question. That question is about PSLF. It says, recently, my unsubsidized loan of $25,000 was forgiven. However, my Mohela account now shows that I owe $1.14 in unpaid loan interest. Is this a thing? And should I wait for it to be resolved or pay the small amount just to finalize everything? So this is a good question. We haven't seen this a lot, but we have seen it happen where someone has their PSLF application approved, their debt is discharged, and then they receive a bill for a nominal amount of money. So let's take a look at the answer here. It's going to go pretty much how everything is going right now, and that we suggest patience, because it might just be a while before that balance is resolved. But truly, with PSLF, all of your remaining balance is supposed to be forgiven. So if you had any outstanding interest along with the principal, then all of that balance should have been forgiven. With PSLF, one great thing about it is that it doesn't limit the forgiveness to one or the other, principal or interest. The entire remaining balance is supposed to be forgiven once you have been approved for PSLF. Some people just don't like having a bill around, even if it's $1.14. They want to be done with this completely. So if you would like to pay it, I completely understand the desire to zero things out and just close this chapter. However, since PSLF is supposed to forgive everything, I would think just to give it a bit of time and perhaps that small balance will be resolved. But congratulations on being approved for PSLF. The $1.14 is truly the least of your worries. All right, let's move on to the next question. All right, this one's about the FAFSA. It says, I am filing a FAFSA as a dependent. When it asks me for my student financial information, would I include my parents' assets in that? Or would I only include my own assets and my dad would file a separate FAFSA and list the assets under his name? All right, let's take a look at the answer on this one. So the FAFSA requires information from you as a student, and then depending on your status as dependent or independent, you need to include information for your parent. Your parent would have to add that information as a contributor to the FAFSA. So you would not be required to provide information on behalf of your parent. Your parent would have to log into studentaid.gov and they would have to complete the information on their assets and their other financials when they complete the form as a contributor to your FAFSA. So yes, the information needs to be included, but it does not need to be included from you because your parent needs to go in and add their information on their own as a contributor to the FAFSA. So let's move on to the next question. That question is also about the FAFSA. Since both my parents are deceased, does my brother having temporary custody of me mean I am considered an orphan for FAFSA purposes? Before I get to the answer from this question, I just wanted to send my condolences to this person for the loss of their parents. I know that loss of a parent is not easy, and that when things come up like this, where you have to provide information about your parents and provide documentation of, painful events, that is a burden. So I just, again, send my condolences and just sending you so many wishes for peace as you navigate this process. So let's move on to the answer. It does matter for sure, that status. So you want to make sure that you're selecting the right thing. And the answer is that if at any time since you turned 13, you have had no living biological or adoptive parents, you would be considered an orphan and you should select that box. Just because you select that box, though, does not mean that that's the end of it. When you select that box, what's likely going to happen is after your school receives the information, they're going to ask you for information to verify that you indeed meet the requirements to be classified as an orphan. So your school might reach out to you to ask you for additional information, and you may be asked to provide death certificates so that the school is able to verify that your parents are indeed deceased and that they can move forward going with your classification of yourself as an orphan, because it does affect financial aid. So wishing you the best as you navigate this process. All right, let's move on to our next question. That is, I applied for the FAFSA, and after I submitted my application, it said that my score is negative 1,500. I have wealthy parents, but I've been independent for about 3 to 4 years now. Is there anything that I can do? So The negative 1500 represents something called the SAI, the Student Aid Index. And there's really nothing for you to do now that you have the SAI because you completed the FAFSA. So let's look at the full answer. An SAI of negative 1500 actually indicates that you exhibit a greater level of need. The level of need as measured by the SAI is what is used to determine how much financial aid you are eligible for. So now that you have that SAI, there's nothing for you to do. You did what you were supposed to do by completing the FAFSA. Now it is in the hands of hopefully your school has the FAFSA by now, and they'll be able to use that information, including the SAI, to determine how much aid you're eligible for, and then to present you with an offer letter that explains the type of aid you're eligible for and the amounts of each type that you are eligible for. So nothing left to do other than wait to hear from your school about that eligibility, and then you'll have to decide how much of each form of aid you would like to accept. So hang in there, and I hope you get your offer letter soon. All right, let's move on to the next question. Looking at this question, just wanted to give a quick note here. We have some questions that came in after the fact, so I'm just going to answer those questions directly. We don't have slides prepared for them, but these are some questions that came into me via email. The first one is, what is the best option for going to PT school? PT is physical therapy. This person is headed to PT school in the fall. They're planning to take out the Grad Plus Loan. They have no undergraduate loans and applied for scholarships but did not get any. And their question is, what should my next steps be? So first, congratulations on being accepted into a physical therapy program. Second is that when you're applying for or you're looking for financial aid at the graduate school level, much of the process is going to look the same way that it did for undergrad. Since you have the loans, I'm not sure if you completed the FAFSA. I don't know if you received grants or not, but I'll just walk you through the process. For graduate school, you want to make sure that you complete the FAFSA. As a graduate school student, you would be automatically considered as independent. So you would not be required to get a parent to contribute their financial information to the FAFSA. Once you complete the FAFSA and it works its way through the Department of Education, it will go to your school. They will take a look at what you've entered and they will determine your eligibility for different types of aid programs. After they've done that, they will send you an offer letter, and that offer letter is going to explain to you the types of aid that you're eligible for and the amounts of aid that you have been awarded. Once you look at that, you'll be able to determine or decide which types of aid you want to accept. When you're accepting anything that's gift aid, that's scholarships, grants, we want all of that. So you want to definitely make sure that you're maximizing your use of gift aid before you take out loans. I noticed in the question that you went straight to Grad Plus loans, but at the graduate level, there's still an opportunity to take out direct unsubsidized loans. So when you receive your offer letter, if you complete the FAFSA and are eligible for federal aid, you should see direct unsubsidized loans there, as well as the Grad Plus loan, depending on the cost of attendance. With the direct unsubsidized loans, we typically advise people to maximize their eligibility for the direct unsubsidized loans first before they take Graduate Plus loans. The reason being is that Graduate Plus loans have a higher interest rate. They also have a higher origination fee. So all in all, they're more expensive than direct unsubsidized loans. The Graduate Plus loans are also the only type of federal student aid that requires a credit check. Granted, the credit check is not a traditional one in a sense that they're not going to look at your credit score, but it's still a credit check. It's going to take a look at your credit history to see if you have any large items that are often referred to as adverse credit history, which might prevent you from receiving the Graduate Plus loan. So if you're offered direct unsubsidized loans, we'd advise you to take those loans before taking out the Graduate Plus loans. In terms of not receiving any scholarships, I would want to make sure that you exhausted your search. That would be taking a look at scholarships and grant programs that might be available from your state of residence. Also taking a look at institutional scholarships. So does your school have any large programs? At the institutional level, also look at your department or your program level. So for physical therapy, are there any special scholarship or grants, grant opportunities that you might need to apply for apart from the FAFSA? There's several levels to this scholarship search. So I want to make sure that you've exhausted all of those, and perhaps there might be some dollars out there that you hadn't come across before. The other thing I wanted to say is that financial aid is different every year. The amount of financial aid that you can be awarded, it could be different every single year. So this year, perhaps you didn't receive any scholarships. Maybe next year you will. Or maybe there are scholarships that are available for returning students instead of first-year students. It really depends on the school. But the first step in all of this is to complete the FAFSA, because the FAFSA is basically the gateway to federal aid, in many cases, state aid and institutional aid. So complete that form so that you will be alerted as to what types of scholarships, grants, loans, or even work study, what types of programs you might be eligible to receive aid from. So wishing you the best, and congrats again on getting into a PT program. All right, let's move on to our next question. And that question is, I have applied for student loan forgiveness and I can't seem to get my loans forgiven like everyone else. Can you help? Okay, so this is one of those questions where I need additional details, because there are several pathways to forgiveness, and I don't know which pathway this particular borrower has pursued. So just to go over the broad categories. First, I still have to say this, even though the plan was struck down by the Supreme Court last year, the broad application for student loan forgiveness, going back to that $10,000 or $20,000 per borrower, some people are still thinking that, something might happen with that, or just thinking that that was the only application that they had to fill out to get on track for loan forgiveness. If you filled out that application back in 2022 or early 2023, or actually that was just 2022, if you filled out that application back then, that program is going nowhere. So, you're not alone in having not heard anything back about that. I hadn't either. Next program I'm going to talk about is public service loan forgiveness. If you have submitted an application for public service loan forgiveness, but you just submitted it in May, June, or earlier July of this year, then you haven't heard anything because there was a processing pause on it. If you submitted the application before the pause, you might be caught up in that backlog, and perhaps you'll hear something soon now that the Department of Education has resumed processing. To check, I would go into studentaid.gov/PSLF, take a look at my activity to see if you have any outstanding applications there. And if you do have outstanding applications, you can figure out why the application hasn't moved forward, if it has been paused. It could be that your employer did not verify your employment yet. It could be that you selected the manual signature option, but you didn't download the form and get it signed or upload it within studentaid.gov. But for PSLF updates, go to studentaid.gov and log in to see if your application has been processed, or if it's waiting, on someone else to do their part to process that application. The other major pathway to loan forgiveness is IDR, which stands for income-driven repayment. With IDR, there is no application for the forgiveness piece of this. If you have qualifying loans and if you are enrolled in an income-driven repayment plan, then you're on track. Actually receiving a payment count to get the status of your progress toward IDR forgiveness, no one has received that officially yet. That's not supposed to come until September. So we've got a bit more time to wait there. So bottom line is there are multiple pathways to forgiveness. If you've already submitted an application for something, then you can check the status of the application by going to studentaid.gov. And if it's an option that doesn't have an application, specifically IDR, we'd have to wait until September to get a specific update. So for this borrower, we did reach back out to say, please give us more details on what you applied for so that we can figure out how to give you the best advice. But for any of you who are seeing people around you get their loans forgiven and you're wondering, why not me? It could be because you were just waiting for an answer. It could be you didn't complete an application. But go to studentaid.gov so you can figure out exactly what the case is. All right, Let's take a look at our next question. Next question is, hello, Dr. Tisa. My daughter finally completed the nurse practitioner requirements. Unfortunately, we had to take out several private loans. Is there a forgiveness program she qualifies for? We've both been looking but have been unsuccessful. So, unfortunately, when it comes to private loans, there really aren't forgiveness options out there, especially not like the forgiveness programs that are offered on federal student loans. So with private loans, for many people, the advice that we've given is shop around for better options in terms of interest rates, repayment flexibility, or even customer service so that you can refinance. Because with private loans, there is no public service loan forgiveness. There is no income-driven repayment cancellation. You're just in it until the loans are paid off. So the best you can do is really to make it as less expensive, or make it the least expensive that you can possibly make it by searching for loans that have better terms. So for better terms, we're talking about lower interest rates, perhaps lower fees, lower penalties in the event that you miss a payment. Those are the major terms behind loans. And another part of this is unfortunate is that right now we are in a relatively high interest rate environment. So you might not be able to find any other options to refinance that are truly going to lower your costs. The other thing that I wanted to know from this borrower was, is their daughter going to go back to school? Because if their daughter is going to go back to school, that means that more loans will probably have to be taken out. If federal loans are an option, we would encourage the borrower to maximize the federal loans before going to borrow private. And if there's any extra funds that are left over, use those funds to pay down the private loans. But this is something we wouldn't really be able to strategize about until we know for sure that the daughter is going to go back to graduate school, and also how much aid the daughter would receive in federal aid from that graduate school program. So we've got more follow-up questions, but for those of you who are dealing strictly with private student loans, the advice truly is to look for better terms. And right now, interest rates are high, so you might have to wait until later this year or next year. Perhaps they'll come down and you might be able to find a lender that has some more attractive terms for you to save a bit of money as you repay these private loans. All right, I think that does it for our questions today. So I do want to share something that could be of use to this particular borrower if they are a Maryland resident, and that is the Maryland Student Loan Debt Relief Tax Credit. Maryland has a student loan debt relief tax credit every year that can provide people with cash assistance to pay down their student loans. Now, I said cash assistance because for people who are getting a refund or who do not owe every year when they file their income taxes, that benefit would come to you as cash through your refund. So if you're expecting a $1,000 refund from the state and you are selected as a recipient of this tax credit, you would receive an additional dollar amount. In recent years, it's been like $1,200. Instead of getting a $1,000 refund, you would get a $2,200 refund because the tax credit is processed through your tax refund. If you owed, then your the balance that you owe would be lessened by the amount of the tax credit. But the idea is you receive this credit from the state, and then you take that money and use it to pay down your student loan debt. You can complete the application for the student loan debt relief tax credit now. That application is going to be available until 11:59 p.m. on September the 15th. The application is available online at Maryland One Stop. You will have to log in to complete the application. It is free. It says here that it can take 15 to 30 minutes. That's because the application requires you to answer some questions, but also provide proof of your loans as well as some proof of your attendance at the schools that you were attending when you took out the loans. So be prepared with documentation. You can get more information on the documentation required by going straight to MHEC. But to complete the application, you want to go to Maryland One Stop. Again, this tax year is, this tax credit is annual. It does work. I have received it. And I can tell you the process was not difficult to provide the documentation that I had made the payments, but you have to stay on top of it, because if you do not provide documentation, I believe it's within 3 years of receiving the tax credit. If you don't provide documentation that you made payments on your student loans for at least the amount of the tax credit, then the credit will be clawed back. So you would have to pay that money back to the state. So for more information on the Maryland Student Loan Debt Relief Tax Credit for tax year 2024, please go to the Maryland Higher Education Commission. And once you're ready to complete that application, you can go straight to Maryland One Stop. All right, there's one more resource I would like to share specifically for Marylanders, and that is the Office of the Student Loan Ombudsman. Maryland is a state that has a student loan ombudsperson. Her name is Amy Hennon, and her office is available to you to provide assistance with student loan servicer problems that may include failure by the servicer to communicate with a borrower, errors in crediting principal and interest payments, misapplied payments, inaccurate interest rate calculations, billing errors, loan consolidations or modifications errors, and or inappropriate collection activity or tactics. So there's plenty that the student loan ombudsperson can help you with. You just need to reach out. Go to their website. It's housed in the state's Department of Labor, and you can reach the portal to submit a complaint. All right. I think that does it for all of the questions that we received. I'm looking at the comments so far. I don't see any questions that have come in. No questions on Instagram either. So I would like to thank you all for joining us for this, the July 24th edition of Office Hours presented by the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. We take questions. I get them sometimes via email, via text. We also have a contact form on the website, which is mccfw.org/contact. You can go there to join our mailing list. That would subscribe you to our monthly newsletter and also give you the opportunities to submit your question, and we may answer the question on the next edition of Office Hours. We are also on social media as at the MCCFW across all platforms. So please do join in the conversation and engage with us. I'm taking another look at Instagram. I don't see any comments there. I don't see any comments or questions on our Facebook page either. So if we have no further questions, I know we're wrapping up a bit early. I would like to again thank everyone for being a part of our community here at the Maryland Center for Collegiate Financial Wellness. If you have any questions that come up, please do feel free to reach out. And if you'd like to support, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. You can make a donation online at mccfw.org/support. Again, that's mccfw.org/support. Lastly, this episode will be annotated so that you'll be able to go straight to the content that interests you. And once we've annotated the video, it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. So if you go to youtube.com/@the-MCCFW, you can view previous editions of Office Hours, and you can also subscribe to our channel. No more questions. Just did one more final check. Thank you so much for your time and your support. And until next time, be well. Bye-bye.